welcome to the Property Wealth Podcast. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to have you with us. Today, we're diving into a topic that's really exciting: how to buy your first rental property with no money down.
I know, right? It sounds almost too good to be true, but there are ways to make it happen. We'll explore some practical strategies and real-life examples.
Exactly. And for anyone listening who might think, I don't have the cash for a down payment, we're here to show you that it's possible to get started in real estate without breaking the bank.
We'll cover things like leveraging partnerships, understanding creative financing options, and even how to find deals that can work for you, even if you're starting from scratch.
It's all about mindset and being open to different approaches. So whether you're looking to build wealth for retirement or just want an extra stream of income, we've got some great insights lined up.
So let's jump right in. Mike, what do you think is the first step for someone who's interested in getting started but feels stuck because of finances?
You know, Sarah, when we talk about buying your first rental property with no money down, it's really about timing and awareness, especially for those over 40.
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, at this stage in life, many folks are starting to think more seriously about their retirement plans, right?
Exactly. And with the current economic climate, like inflation being a real concern, people are looking for ways to not just save, but to grow their wealth.
Yeah, and it's interesting because many people over 40 might feel like they've missed the boat on real estate investing. But that's not necessarily true, is it?
No, not at all. In fact, I've seen people turn their financial situations around dramatically, even later in life. For instance, I worked with a couple in their early 50s who thought they were too late to invest. They had a decent income but limited savings.
What did they do?
Well, they learned about leveraging other people's money, you know? They found a great property in an up-and-coming neighborhood and negotiated a seller finance deal.
Oh, that's interesting. So they didn't need to come up with a huge down payment?
Exactly. The seller was motivated and willing to finance the deal themselves, which meant our clients could focus on cash flow rather than scraping together a down payment.
That's such a smart strategy. I can see how that would alleviate a lot of stress for people worried about finances at this age.
Right? And the beauty of it is that they didn't just buy a property. They created an asset that would protect them against inflation.
That's a great point. Real estate often appreciates over time, which can really help keep pace with inflation, right?
Absolutely. Let's say they bought that property for, $300,000. If it appreciates at just 3% a year, that's $9,000 added to their wealth annually. Over 10 years, that's a significant boost.
And think about it too. They could rent it out and generate monthly cash flow. It's like having an additional income stream, which can be a game changer as people approach retirement.
For sure. Plus, it gives them a sense of security, you know? Many investors feel a lot of peace of mind knowing they have a tangible asset.
I can see that. It's not just about the money. It's about that emotional security too.
Exactly. And then there's the aspect of wealth transfer to family. When you invest in real estate, you're not just building for yourself. You're creating a legacy for your kids or grandkids.
That's so important. I think many people over 40 start thinking about their families' futures more seriously.
Definitely. I remember another client of mine, a woman in her late 40s. She bought a duplex with very little down and made sure to involve her kids in the process.
In what way?
Well, she had them help with the renovations and even taught them about renting out one side. It became a family project. And now they're all invested in the outcome, both financially and emotionally.
That's such a great way to bond and teach valuable lessons.
And it's also something that can instill a sense of responsibility and financial literacy in the next generation.
Right. And let's not forget about the shift in the real estate market. With the recent economic trends, there are opportunities out there that might not have existed a few years ago.
True. The market is always changing. I've seen properties in great locations that were once out of reach now being available for more reasonable prices.
So it's about keeping your eyes peeled for those opportunities.
Exactly. And you don't have to go at it alone. There are groups, meetups, and even online forums where you can connect with other investors.
Networking is so powerful.
It really is. Just think about it. If you're over 40 and considering this journey, connecting with others who are in a similar boat can provide not only insights, but also encouragement.
Yes. Plus, learning from others, experiences can save you a lot of time and mistakes.
Right. And let's not forget about the importance of having a solid plan. When you know your goals and have a strategy, it becomes easier to navigate those shifts in the market.
That makes perfect sense. So it sounds like there are a lot of reasons why this is the right time for people over 40 to dive into real estate investing.
Absolutely. With the right mindset, knowledge, and strategies, they can really set themselves up for a more secure financial future.
And speaking of strategies, let's transition into some practical steps our listeners can take to start their journey in real estate investing, especially with that no money down approach.
So let's dive into some of those core strategies, yeah? One of the first things I always mention is the 1% rule. It's a simple way to quickly evaluate whether a property might be a good investment.
Right, the 1% rule. Can you break that down a bit for us?
Sure. So the idea is that the monthly rent you can expect should be at least 1% of the purchase price of the property. For example, if you're looking at a home that costs $200,000, you should aim for about $2,000 in monthly rent.
That makes sense. So if a property doesn't meet that 1% threshold, it might not be worth pursuing?
Exactly. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it gives you a solid starting point for analyzing potential cash flow.
And what about the 50% rule? I've heard that one tossed around too.
Yes. The 50% rule is another quick way to estimate operating expenses. Basically, you can assume that about 50% of your rental income will go towards expenses such as maintenance, property management, taxes, all that stuff.
So if you're bringing in $2,000 a month from rent, you'd set aside about $1,000 for expenses?
Exactly. That leaves you with the other half to cover your mortgage, and hopefully some profit. It's a good way to gauge how much cash flow you might have.
Got it. And these rules can help, especially if someone's new to investing, right?
Definitely. They simplify the process and help you avoid getting overwhelmed by the numbers. Another thing I recommend is creating a deal evaluation checklist.
What would that include?
Well, you'd want to include things like the property's location, the condition of the property, the local rental market, and of course, financing options.
Speaking of financing, what are some ways someone can buy a property without putting any money down?
There are a few strategies. One popular option is seller financing. Sometimes, the seller is willing to finance the purchase themselves instead of going through a bank.
Oh, that's interesting. So the seller would act like the bank?
Exactly. You'd negotiate terms directly with them, and it can be a win-win situation. The seller gets cash flow from their property, and you get a chance to invest without upfront costs.
That's a creative approach. What about assuming a mortgage?
That's another strategy. If the seller has a low-interest mortgage, you might be able to assume that mortgage and take over the payments. This can be especially beneficial if rates are climbing.
I can see how that would save a lot of money up front.
Right? Another option is to tap into other people's money, or OPM. This could be friends, family, or even investors who are interested in real estate. You can offer them a return on their investment.
So it's about building those relationships and finding people who believe in your vision?
Exactly. Don't forget about partnerships. Teaming up with someone who has the capital, but maybe lacks the time or expertise, can be a great way to get started.
That sounds like a smart way to leverage strengths.
For sure. Now, when it comes to property types, I usually recommend starting with single-family homes or small multi-units. They tend to be easier to manage and have a larger pool of potential renters.
And those are usually more affordable too, right?
Yes, typically. Plus, they often sell faster if you decide to exit the investment. On the other hand, larger properties can bring in more income, but they also come with more complexities and risks.
Makes sense. So keeping it simple at first is a good strategy.
Definitely. And remember to pay attention to the local market. Research neighborhoods that are showing signs of growth. Look for areas where new businesses are moving in or where schools are improving.
Right, those are indicators that property values might rise.
Exactly. And it's key to understand the cap rate too, which is a measure of a property's profitability. You calculate it by dividing the net operating income by the purchase price.
So if a property generates $20,000 in net income and you bought it for $200,000, the cap rate would be
10%. That's actually a pretty good cap rate. Generally, you want to look for properties that offer at least 8% to 10% to ensure you're getting a decent return.
Wow, that's a great way to quickly assess potential profitability.
Right? And don't forget to factor in your long-term goals. Are you looking for cash flow or appreciation? That can influence the type of property you pursue.
That's a crucial point. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. Now let's transition to some common pitfalls investors might face when starting out.
Yes, please. I think that's super important to cover.
One of the biggest mistakes is underestimating the costs involved. Many new investors focus only on the purchase price and neglect things like repairs or vacancies.
That can definitely lead to surprises down the line.
Absolutely. Also, getting too emotionally attached to a property can cloud your judgment. It's important to stay objective and stick to your investment criteria.
Great advice.
And, of course, not having a solid exit strategy can leave you in a tough spot. You need to know when to hold and when to let go.
That's a great segue into our next topic. Let's talk about how to avoid those pitfalls and set yourself up for success in your investing journey.
So, Sarah, one of the biggest pitfalls I see with new investors, especially those looking to buy their first rental property with no money down, is over-leveraging. It's tempting to think that you can just dive into the market and take on as much debt as possible to maximize your potential returns.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really appealing. But what usually happens when someone over-leverages?
Well, it can lead to some serious financial strain. I had a client, let's call him Jake, who bought a 4-unit property using a high-interest loan to cover the down payment. He thought he'd be making a killing from rent, but he didn't account for the high monthly payments and, the unexpected expenses that came up.
Like what?
Right, so, for example, one of the units had a major plumbing issue. It ended up costing him thousands to fix. With all those extra costs piling up, he was barely breaking even. And then suddenly, he was in the negative every month. It was a tough lesson for him.
That sounds stressful. So how can someone avoid that kind of situation?
Good question. The key is to really analyze your cash flow before making a purchase. Make sure you're not just looking at potential income, but also consider all the expenses involved. Things like maintenance, property management fees, and even vacancies.
Right. And I guess having a buffer for those unexpected costs is important too.
Exactly. Another common mistake is ignoring the quality of tenants. I've seen investors so eager to fill their units that they skip thorough background checks, and then they end up with tenants who, let's say, don't pay rent on time or cause damage to the property.
Oh no, that must be a nightmare. Do you have an example?
Yeah, I worked with a woman named Lisa who was desperate to fill her rental. She took in a tenant without doing a proper screening, and it turned out they had a history of evictions. Long story short, they stopped paying rent after a couple of months, and she had to go through the eviction process, which took months and cost her a fortune.
Wow, that sounds like such a hassle. So what's the best way to screen tenants?
Well, it's essential to have a solid application process in place. Check credit scores, references, and previous rental history. And, trust your instincts too. If something feels off about a potential tenant, it's usually for a reason.
That makes a lot of sense. What about cash flow? I think a lot of people don't realize how critical that is.
Absolutely. Many new investors focus too much on the property's potential appreciation and forget about cash flow. I had a client, Mark, who bought a property in a hot market, thinking it would appreciate quickly. He didn't pay much attention to the rental income compared to his mortgage payments.
And how did that turn out?
Well, the property did appreciate, eventually, but in the meantime, he struggled to cover his costs. He ended up having to sell it at a loss because he couldn't sustain the monthly payments. So always prioritize cash flow. It's the backbone of real estate investing.
Yeah, that's such an important takeaway. Anything else that people should be aware of?
Sure, timing the market can be a trap too. I've seen investors wait for the perfect moment to buy, thinking prices will drop, and then they miss out altogether. A guy the first know, Tom, held out for a year waiting for a dip that never came.
That must be frustrating. So what's your advice on that?
Well, I always say that trying to time the market is like trying to predict the weather. It's unpredictable. Instead, Focus on finding the right investment for your goals, and make sure you're financially prepared to hold on to it long term, regardless of market fluctuations.
That's a smart approach. And I imagine hidden costs can sneak up on investors too, right?
Definitely. There are always those unexpected expenses that can pop up. I had a client named Rachel who bought a property with what she thought was a solid inspection report. But after moving in, she discovered the roof needed major repairs.
Oh no, that must have been a huge hit to her budget.
It was. She hadn't accounted for that in her financing, and it put her in a tight spot. So it's crucial to budget for repairs and maintenance, like setting aside a percentage of your rental income every month to cover those costs.
So it sounds like doing due diligence is key. Getting a thorough inspection and really understanding what you're getting into.
Exactly, and it's also important to keep an eye out for red flags. If a property is priced significantly below market value, for instance, there's usually a reason for that.
That's a great point. What else should investors look out for?
Well, I think it's also wise to watch out for properties that have a lot of deferred maintenance or are in poor neighborhoods. They might seem like a great deal initially, but they can lead to headaches down the line.
Wow, so much to consider. But it sounds like as long as you're prepared and do your homework, you can avoid these pitfalls.
Exactly. And if you do make a mistake, it's important to learn from it and adjust your strategy moving forward.
I love that mindset. So what's the next step for someone who's ready to dive in after hearing all this?
Well, I'd say start by educating yourself further. Read books, listen to podcasts, and maybe even attend local real estate investment meetings. And once you feel confident, begin looking for properties that fit your budget and cash flow goals while keeping an eye out for those red flags we discussed.
Sounds like a solid plan. Thanks for sharing all this valuable insight, Mike.
My pleasure, Sarah. It's all about building that foundation for long-term wealth. So let's dive into some immediate steps you can take today for anyone looking to buy their first rental without any money down.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming, but breaking it down into actionable steps makes it doable, right?
Exactly. First off, I'd recommend you start by analyzing properties. You can use tools like Zillow or Redfin to get a feel for the market. Just plug in your desired area and start looking at properties.
That's a great start. And there are also specialized tools like Deal Check or the Bigger Pockets calculator, which help you run the numbers on potential deals.
Right. Those calculators can give you a clear picture of cash flow, potential profits, and expenses, so you can see if a property really makes sense for you.
And don't forget Rentometer. It's super useful for checking rental rates in specific neighborhoods.
Absolutely. Knowing what you can charge for rent helps you gauge your investment potential.
It's all about that informed decision-making, isn't it?
Exactly. And if you're just starting, I'd suggest setting a goal to analyze at least one deal a week. Just one.
One deal a week feels manageable, and it builds a habit, right?
Yes, and that consistency will boost your confidence over time.
Speaking of building habits, joining a local real estate meetup could be really beneficial too.
For sure. Networking is key in real estate. Connecting with other investors can provide support and insights you wouldn't get otherwise.
It's about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, right?
Exactly. And you might find mentors or partners in those groups, which can be incredibly valuable.
Now, about resources, any must-read books or podcasts?
There's a great book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a classic and really shifts your mindset about money and investing.
Oh, yes. And the Bigger Pockets podcast is fantastic too. It's full of real-life stories and tips from successful investors.
Those stories can be really inspiring, and they often share their mistakes too, which is just as important to learn from.
Definitely. And let's not overlook the power of social media.
Right. Follow real estate investors on platforms like Instagram or YouTube. They share tips, tricks, and even walkthroughs of their deals.
That can make the information feel more relatable, you know?
Exactly. Plus, you can engage with them directly, ask questions, and get feedback. It's like having a mini community right at your fingertips.
And speaking of engaging, I think it's important to really reflect on your personal goals, what you want to achieve in real estate.
That's crucial. Write them down. Visualize what success looks like for you.
Yeah, and break them down into smaller, achievable milestones.
Right. Start with, finding your first deal. Then move on to securing financing, even if it's creative financing options.
So what about financing? Any tips for those without upfront cash?
Well, you can explore seller financing or lease options. If you can find a motivated seller, they might be open to creative terms.
That's a great point. And sometimes people overlook partnerships. Teaming up with someone can reduce the financial burden.
Absolutely. Combining resources or expertise with a partner can lead to better opportunities.
And remember, it's about starting where you are, even if that means starting small.
Yes, begin with what's available to you. Maybe it's just researching or reaching out to a local investor for advice.
Right. Every step, no matter how small, is still progress.
And as you take those steps, keep learning, read, listen, and stay curious about the market.
So with these tools in your pocket, you're ready to move forward. Let's recap what we've covered today.
So as we wrap up, let's recap a few key takeaways from our discussion. First off, we really emphasized the importance of creative financing options, right?
Absolutely. Using strategies like seller financing or lease options can really open doors, especially for those just starting out.
And then there's the significance of building relationships with other investors and lenders. Networking can lead to opportunities that you might not find on your own.
Yes. And don't forget about the power of research. Knowing your market is crucial. Understanding the local trends can make a huge difference in your investment decisions.
For sure. And finally, I think we highlighted that mindset is key. Believing in your ability to succeed and taking that first step is what really sets the stage for building wealth.
Right. It's all about taking action, even when it feels a bit daunting. Real estate can be a fantastic way to create long-term financial freedom.
Yeah, and remember, building wealth through real estate isn't just a dream. It's very much achievable, especially if you start with the right approach.
Exactly! If you found this episode helpful, we'd love for you to like and subscribe to our channel. And please, comment below with your biggest takeaway or any questions you might have.
And don't forget to share this episode with someone over 40 who's thinking about diving into property investment. You never know who might need that little nudge.
Next time, we're going to dive into the 50% rule. That's all about understanding the true cost of owning rentals. So if you're curious about the hidden expenses, you won't want to miss it.
It's going to be a good one.
Thanks for joining us today.
Take care, everyone.
And happy investing!